Her name's Jennifer.
Jennifer.
Neighborhood beautification. That's very important to Detroit. It's very important to block clubs, organizations, and people who live in the community. We got started with 2 lots and a vision of a treehouse center. Because if we can take these blighted lots, Detroit give us grants to be able to do something with them that the community wants, it's a plus because we're bringing our neighborhoods back to where we want them to be, where they should be. All because I live in Detroit.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabria, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
This is Alyssa Slotkin, Democrat running for the U.S. Senate. I want to share a story about who, more than anyone, taught me the importance of listening and accountability. It was President Barack Obama. I served in the White House on his national security staff. I got to see him in action, up close, and behind closed doors in the Oval Office. First, he was brilliant, and therefore demanded people really knew their stuff. It was President Obama who grilled me on issues and demanded accountability on what we said and did. That commitment to accountability is exactly the approach I use today, listening to our communities. It's why I've written an opportunity agenda with detailed plans to strengthen Black businesses, increase Black wealth, and provide real opportunities for our youth. Because, as President Obama taught me, you better say what you mean and mean what you say. So that's why I approve this message.
Vote early or on August 6th for Alyssa Slotkin, Democrat for U.S. Senate. Paid for by Alyssa Slotkin.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Week That Was. My name is Saeed Khan. It is good to be back on the show and back in the USA. Did he actually say that? Yes, I did. It's been an eventful week, to be sure, and to go ahead and help us piece it through, we are joined by 2 of our 3 attorneys, Joel Sklar and Bill Seikaly. Steve Fishman is on a bit of a break this week. We are also joined by Detroit Free Press investigative columnist ML Elrick, also fellow Sisters of Mercy fan, who's going to help us dissect this corrosion of democracy. Also joining us are labor and community activist Barb Ingalls, veteran journalist Nancy Derringer, and of course co-founder of Deadline Detroit, Allan Lengel. So I think this is going to turn out to be a little bit like a French movie. It may not be chronologically linear, but let's go ahead and see where we can go with it. Most recently, we have the conclusion of the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. A momentous event, to be sure. And Allan, I think we should start with a couple of videos.
All right, let's do it.
Vance has debased himself to crawl to his perch as Trump's number 2. Here's some of the stuff he had to say about Trump before he got into politics.
In 2016, he suggested Trump might be America's Hitler, called him cultural heroin, and referred to him as noxious.
I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him.
Here's how low Vance has fallen 8 years later as Trump's running mate.
President Trump obviously is one of the most successful real estate executives in the history of our country. Of course, the Trump name became synonymous with luxury and with beauty in the real estate world.
Is it though, really? I've seen this picture of him at a breakfast buffet. That looks like the Spirit Airlines second class lounge.
All right, can we do one more? Let's.
To heal a hurting nation, the RNC brought in their most dignified voices to deliver their message with gravity and respect.
What happened last week when they took a shot at my hero? And they tried to kill the next president of the United States. Enough was enough.
Whoa! Thank you. The healing has begun. He's going to make a great energy secretary. We heard a lot of talks. Now it's time to bring the nation together with a sober message of unity. Who's next?
Everybody, get a fist up in the air! Now
Follow me.
Pardon? I love to watch white people, particularly Republicans, at these conventions try to react to music in any way that a normal human would react to it. I mean, I think Dave Barry was talking about how they can't quite clap on time, you know. They kind of that goes put a fist in the air, and that lady's going in her red, white, and blue cowboy hat.
I'm just waiting for Germany's Der Spiegel to declare Adolf Hitler to be Germany's Donald Trump, because that's waiting to happen. Go ahead, Nancy.
Can I point out one thing, because I've noticed a guy that I am kind of internet acquainted with keeps mentioning it this morning on Twitter. Hulk Hogan defamation case against Gawker, which led to Gawker going out of business. Was bankrolled by Peter Thiel, the weirdo techno gay oddball from California. Peter Thiel is also JD Vance's sugar daddy. He was a mentor for him, and he's also been the one who he poured millions and millions into his Senate campaign in Ohio. He is, so at least make that connection. This stupid for the rubes Hulk Hogan act that he did last night. This was all part of this wasn't something that just kind of sprouted like a flower from this was Peter Thiel's.
Well, I think Thiel was responsible for.
Is it Thiel? Is the H?
Thiel.
Okay, sorry.
It's Thiel. Of taking Vance down to Mar-a-Lago to smooth things out, in order to reconcile between what Allan showed in the video from 2016 to the encomium that he provided 2 days ago. Bill.
And
go ahead, Nancy.
I was just going to say, if you want to know what the Trump administration will be, should it come to pass, look at what Peter Thiel wants, and that's what will be prioritized. Mm-hmm. Sorry, Bill, go ahead.
It's okay. I feel like I have to say something, because I feel like I really took one for the team. I generally can't watch Trump speak or Vance speak, but I intentionally watched both Vance's speech, and then in really one of the most painful hours and 32 minutes, who was counting, watched Trump's speech.
A grateful panel thanks you.
It was awful. It was truly awful. But I want to point out a couple of things that I thought were very interesting. The only thing that Vance and Trump really have in common today is they're both populist. Their agendas are completely different. If you listen to Vance's speech, he talks about, he actually sounds a lot more like Biden when he talks about the problems being big corporations setting the agenda. They're not doing what is right. Completely inconsistent with everything that Trump says in that regard. So I can understand why he took the position he did. I think he's an opportunist and wants to be the head of the MAGA family. I didn't, is the answer to your question. I couldn't control the nausea last night. It was painful.
I watched a lot of it. And in fact, after 3 nights, I woke up in the morning, I felt sick watching it. And I did watch it again, and for partly the same reason as Bill, so I could talk about it. But, the one thing, when you see Hulk Hogan, Kid Rock, he's the master panderer. He panders to every group that he can possibly, and he's changed the whole context of these things. Like, you're watching it and going, what the fuck is this? His speech in the beginning, for maybe, last night, for maybe the first 20 minutes, it sounded like a long Academy Award acceptance speech.
14 minutes, Alan. Who was counting? 14 minutes he stayed off script, but he also sounded jilted, didn't he?
Yeah.
He was really just reading it.
There was no energy there, and he was like, "Oh, hey, Hulk Hogan. Oh, Kid Rock. I've known him for 10 years now. We've become good buddies." And it was like, this is, people are waiting to hear an agenda. Like, what are you going to bring forth? And he's talking shit. Like, the arrogance of it, and really the whole theme was to let's soften Donald Trump. So he had grandkids sitting in his lap. his granddaughter, Don Jr.'s daughter, spoke, and she's like, you know, my grandpa calls me sometimes while I'm in school to ask about my golf game, and then he starts telling me about his, and I tell him, Grandpa, I'm in school. Can I call you back? And it's like, what asshole calls his kid, you know, his grandkid in the middle of school and starts talking about golf? It's like, hello, I'm in school. You get it?
Hey, Allan, did you ever, like, while you were watching the speech, did you ever feel like you needed to go Larry David and start doing the whole Oscar outro music? Ba-da-da-dum, ba-da. Yeah, ML.
So I didn't see it, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But watching Hulk Hogan say they tried to kill him, who's they? Because I understand this young man was a registered Republican. So is it now?
It was a theme throughout the night, ML. It was actually probably all 3 nights. They tried to kill him. They didn't talk about the kid. They didn't talk about what he was like. They didn't do any analysis.
But Bill, did you see if the shooter's preferred pronouns were they? I mean, maybe that was why.
Did he wear the Stay Free mini pad on his ear for the speech?
Actually, not only did he, but many people in the crowd had that same patch on his ear. It was really, I almost put one on my forehead today.
So generally
speaking, over your eyes, in your ears.
Here's how this would have worked if a Democrat had gone up there with a pad behind his ear, like, they're feeding him the speech. That's a control box. They're using that so he knows what to say. I saw an episode of Star Trek one time where it's like, stop. So here's why I didn't see the speech.
But to be fair, you know, I watched when he got shot and he was fine. I thought of the Manchurian Candidate immediately. I know that this may be crazy that this kid could possibly, but that's the first thing I thought of is right before the convention. What a great story. And that's exactly where my mind went. And I have no, of course, evidence to establish anything. This was one kid who had a really bad problem and who acted out.
Access to an AR-15.
Yeah, I mean, and Joel, I mean, is it really our fault that we become that cynical and suspicious? I mean, here he is, he comes back up and he does a fist pump in the air out of defiance. I mean, it just seemed, I mean, at least the optics, that everything was scripted.
It reminds me
have a video
Angela Lansbury, you know, right before, here's what's going to happen. And then the vice president will lift you and the crowd will go insane. And that's kind of what's happening. I know it's crazy, but that's where my head.
I'll tell you what I was offended by more than anything else during this entire process. This notion that God intervened to save Trump, because I cannot imagine that any God that I want anything to do with would save Trump and kill a fireman who was protecting his family. I mean,
although that guy is a piece of shit too. I don't know if you.
I'm not arguing with you about that, Nancy. I mean,
that's fine.
The family even refused to take the.
Yeah.
Just pointing out that Biden made a call the very next day to the family. They refused to take the call because their father was such a Trump supporter.
Right.
But said, we have nothing against Biden. He didn't do anything to our father or our husband. It was a deranged 20-year-old.
Right.
Trump called yesterday.
Right.
Waited 5 days when he needed a prop for his goddamn speech. The man is despicable.
That was horrible, that little
prop. He came through. They wrote him a great beginning speech. He could not help himself. He went right back to who he was, who he is, and who he's always going to be. And if nobody paid attention to it, he announced yesterday he's going to have more deportations than this country has ever seen. He's going to beat the Eisenhower deportations, he said. He's going to be deporting people who were born in this country, but were born of parents illegally. This is danger.
Do you remember how pissed off everyone was when the restaurants wouldn't open immediately during the pandemic? Wait until they see what the restaurants are going to be like when we get rid of all of these people with, you know, questionable immigration status. It's going to be, because restaurant work is generally not well paid, and it's the kind of thing where, you know, you almost hire, I think I read the guy who runs Zingerman's once said, you hire for dishwashers sometimes on an hourly basis. It's like, wait until they can't get anybody to work in, on the line in these kitchens. And
wait till you can't afford fresh vegetables.
Yeah, that's another one too. I forgot about that. Yeah, you're right. And
you want to know what was also
crop.
really disgusting last night?
Mm-hmm.
One of the keynotes of his speech that got a real roar is, and the reason that we're going to do this is because these immigrants are taking jobs from our blacks and our Latinos.
Our blacks? He actually said that?
I couldn't make this shit up.
Yeah. Okay, that's great.
Barb. I mean, in the convention, there was also the president of the Teamsters gave a speech. All right, nonverbal communication at its finest. But what
for those of you who can't
for the
see
audience who
because
can't
you're listening
see.
to the podcast,
Yes,
Fuck
tell us
Sean
how you feel.
O'Brien is what I just said.
What do you think about this regarding the labor movement and with the Teamsters? I mean, obviously breaking ranks with the UAW.
Well, the CWA is endorsing this week, and the IAE is going to endorse this week for Biden. The Teamsters have a really bad history of supporting the wrong group. There is an actual photo of Ronald Reagan wearing a Teamster jacket right before he got rid of Patco. Famously, the Detroit Teamsters had G.W. Bush on Labor Day at their hall right after the march. So
in Detroit?
In Detroit.
Wow.
It was
I heard that actually the Teamster president also has requested to speak at the Democratic Party, but he basically said what a tough guy or whatever Trump is. He wants to both ways. I don't know if the Democrats are going to let him speak there, but I don't know what choice.
He wants to be Secretary of Labor. Is that right? Wants. This is what I think. But in the meantime, there are very good Teamster brothers and sisters out there who are horrified and very upset about it.
Mm-hmm.
A real good friend of mine who has a very sarcastic sense of humor bought himself a T-shirt that said Marcus Red Fox. It's got the old Marcus Red Fox logo on it. And he wore it to Labor Notes conference and got his picture taken with Sean O'Brien. It's the fun. I thought I laughed so hard, I ordered one. So I have mine for Labor Day. I'm gonna.
Well, Barb, I mean,
humble.
Wow.
Just in case, Barb, I mean, there's one other person who uses the word brother quite frequently and may want to be Secretary of Labor, and that's Hulk Hogan. Yes, brother. Well, a little bit more about JD Vance. I mean, he's on the ticket now. Author, of course, of Hillbilly Elegy, married to an Indian American woman, went to Yale Law, as Nancy said, the beneficiary of Peter Thiel. What do we know about him as far as his latest incarnation, and is he going to be the future of the GOP and the MAGA movement?
Well, as the Ohioan, I guess I have to speak first here. Although he predates my exit from Ohio. In fact, he was born, I think, the year well after I left Ohio. He is a transparent phony, I believe. He is a hustler. I remember reading something amazing about him.
Sounds like he's checking the boxes.
Yeah, well, right, exactly. He remember, he was a never Trumper. We've already seen that. He was a never Trumper, and he was into this kind of kinder, gentler, working class populism, essentially, at the beginning when he first published his book. And then apparently the book was adapted by Ron Howard into a movie that ran on Netflix. I didn't watch it. And it got massacred by critics who called it, simple-minded and, condescending to these people, etc. I reread a couple of reviews. The most thoughtful one was on Roger Ebert's site by one of the critics who writes on that site now, who said, they missed some chances to make some important points, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, he was so bitter that the movie that he had nothing to do with except, writing the source material, that the movie was panned, that's when he kind of turned away, he hardened his heart against any, kind of elite liberal voice, and decided he was just going to cash in and go full MAGA. And that's what he did. And we just saw this. So I wouldn't trust the guy, to deliver my newspaper in the morning, much less be by one heartbeat away from a fat 78-year-old, fast food eating, grifter. So
Nancy,
assassination target, I should say.
His walk-up song should have been by Quarter Flash, then, don't you think? For Harden My Heart. But I mean, from the standpoint then of, as we're speaking about the elderly running for office, we've got Joe Biden. And Mark Halperin, journalist, is reporting that this might be the weekend. His sources seem to indicate that Biden will withdraw but not resign the presidency, but he will also not endorse his vice president, Kamala Harris. How is this going to go as we lead into the Democratic National Convention?
Woo!
Yeah, I'm gonna want. I think it's going to be exciting. I don't know how they're going to do this. I assume on the convention floor, all the delegates will be free to do what they want. When Ed was here before, and he knows so much more. He said it would all be done kind of before that. It'll all be. There wouldn't be such a messy convention. But whatever happens, it's gonna engender excitement. We'll have a younger candidate, no question about it, whether it's Kamala Harris. I'm hoping it's Gretchen Whitmer. I like Gretchen a lot. I think she's very electable. But I think it's good. It will change the momentum. It has that type of impact where it can change the momentum, and that's what we got to do.
Bill, if you can send me your hat size, I want to get afros for you and me of Abby Hoffman proportion. Because we're going to the convention.
Allan has seen this, but I have a picture of me in 1973.
Rocking it.
Some place
with an afro.
Oh yeah,
really?
Yeah.
A Palestinian.
I had a big afro and a big beard. And what's really funny about the picture is that it was taken literally the day. It was my MSU ID card, and I got 2 haircuts and beard trims. The day before I took my picture, and at Christmas time, and this picture has me with a big fro and a pretty big.
And playing
most people think I look like Charles Manson, but
were you ever
never had a beard? I don't think.
Yeah, were you ever mistaken for Sib Haitian from Boston? Because he was rocking that look, afro and a beard. I mean, it could be more than a feeling, but
I see more as that Bob Ross, the painter, Happy Little Trees, that kind of thing. Maybe you could do that, but yeah.
ML, how tumultuous will the convention be then, if it's going to a floor vote?
I think we're about to find out when people say the ideal candidate can beat somebody, that when you put someone in there, you find out they're not the ideal candidate. And I think the chaos, and I think the energy and the bad feelings, listen, here's the deal. I saw Bernie Sanders on TV this morning, and I said to myself, this is the guy who should have been the nominee in 2016. And this is what you get when you try and stack the deck, which is what the Democrats did with their super delegates going in the tank for Hillary Clinton in 2016. Mm-hmm. If they try and orchestrate this, if they try and stage this, if they try and set this up beforehand where people don't have a choice to cast their ballots, there's going to be a riot. If
You're
they
absolutely
let
right.
cast their ballots, there's going to be a riot. It's going to be a shit show. And at the end of it, I don't know. People think they can do better.
There's no one at this moment that I trust less than the national Democratic leadership. I mean, they have bumbled at every stage of this, and anyway, sorry.
Bill.
I agree with ML that the risk here is.
That is a terrorist. Get out of my house.
That's Bill Seikaly.
Look at that unibrow. That is an impression.
Oh boy. Is that a mugshot? What is that? Symbionese Lebanese?
I don't think I've ever seen you dead silent. That's
I'm telling you, that's from Boston's first album, man. I mean, it's
epic.
That is amazing.
That
I
is
love
cool.
it. I love it.
Alan, you're embargoed on that.
That's great.
My wife threw me a birthday party one time, and there were a couple members of the House, a couple state senators there, and some of my high school buddies thought it would be real funny to do a picture review of me, and that was one of them. And all I could do was say, "Oh no."
Could have been there.
Anyway,
Could have been worse.
I think ML pointed out the one thing that we have to avoid. The Democratic Party will implode if the perception is that we're having a repeat of 2016. However, I think that if it's open enough, when I say enough, you have to remember these delegates are selected. I mean, the delegates that we have are the delegates that are going to vote, and so they are not fringe people by any stretch of the imagination. I happen to believe that we stand a fairly good chance of people believing we have to unite, and that we're going to get a consensus candidate, whoever it is, and I can think of 3 or 4 good possibilities.
Right.
Who like? Go ahead. Who do you
Well,
think?
look, I mean, I think Shapiro out of Pennsylvania is one of them. Gavin Newsom, maybe. I certainly think Gretchen Whitmer is high up on the list, and I think Kamala is high up on the list. As long as none of those people are shoved down somebody's throat,
yes,
I think we will be okay, because I think we can be united by the fact that the one thing we can't have is another Trump presidency.
Correct.
And if we keep reminding one another of that, I think it's important. I hear the argument, and I respect the argument that we may regret getting rid of Joe, but I don't see an option at this point, because I think the recent polls say 84% of the country believes that he's not fit to serve another 4-year term. He saved us in 2020.
Yeah.
We need to do something else. We've already shot ourselves in the foot about him.
I agree with what Bill's saying, and I think, I mean, the current is really just washing Joe ashore at this point. I think he's going to have a hard time surviving this. My one concern, though, is we've got 2 major wars that the U.S. has its hand in one way or another. I mean, in the Middle East, which is just a hot spot, and Ukraine. And I wonder if you're bringing in governors who don't have the relationships that, look, Joe Biden has the relationships on the international stage. I worry a little bit about how somebody steps in like Gretchen Whitmer and starts calling Netanyahu, and he's like,
she'll be able to do it. She's been confident in everything she's done. She's done a nice job. She can grow into this job, and she's very calm. And we need somebody who's calm. We don't need chaos for 4 more years. We're going nuts. We'll go crazy. We need something calm, and she is a calming governor.
ML, is that your hand up? Yep.
Yeah, Allan nailed it. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to have a governor, even somebody like Gavin Newsom that has more of an international profile, who's going to have to take a crash course. The Whitmer people don't do a good job handling the Michigan media. And let me tell you, this is not a bloodthirsty press corps. You're dealing with the national media. Holy smokes. Remember Gary Johnson, and believe me, Gretchen Whitmer is way sharper than Gary Johnson. But when they asked him about Aleppo, and he's like, what? Who? You cannot grasp the sort of thing that somebody in the administration right now is getting in a briefing book. The other thing is, if you leapfrog Kamala Harris for a governor, all these black voters who already feel like they've been taken for granted say, now you ditch the sister? That's it. Final sign that we're only here to serve you.
That's actually
there's no governor.
Well, that's true, Mel. If that's how it happened, I think how she handles it will be a big issue.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
I think one thing is it's interesting, and I've talked to some black friends who say I think we think Kamala Harris is beloved in the Black community, and it's not like a straightforward thing. There are Black women, I'm told, who think she's too bougie, that she's a snob, they don't like her. I think a lot of Black men are not embracing her. I mean, look, Joe Biden's been losing some of the Black support, and he's got a Black partner in this. And so I think as long as a democratic process, and I think even Clyburn has said, I think he supports Kamala, but he's open to some type of selection process rather than someone being anointed.
Is he the kingmaker, though? Is Clyburn really the guy who's the kingmaker in this? I don't know. But
he's got a hand. He's one of them.
How important would Obama's endorsement be to this then?
Very.
I've got to put this plug in for Joni. She's pleading. She wants me to figure out how we can beg Michelle Obama to run.
Oh.
No,
she'll never do it.
No,
she doesn't want it.
She'll never do it. Just
why would she want to do it? It's a terrible.
She hates
the issue.
Politics. She'll never do it.
The issue isn't necessarily that Kamala Harris is beloved in the Black community. The issue is you have a large constituency who are already halfway out the door, and they're looking for anything they can seize on to say, yes, I made the right decision to leave. For a lot of voters, I think that's going to be the last straw. I think for a lot of Black voters, it's like, you know what, I wasn't loving these guys, and now this, thank you. Guilt-free, I'm gone. I'm out the door. See ya.
Won't it matter who's on the bottom of the ticket or the top? I mean, it's going to matter what the ticket looks like. What if it's the governor from, I think from Maryland, who was...
that guy's awful.
Who just, I mean, it depends who's on that ticket, whether or not the Black voters are going to feel that, hey, you have disenfranchised us yet again.
Why do you say she's awful? He's awful.
Yeah. I need to understand. Someone's got to explain to me why the Democrats are not running on their strengths on the things that have gotten done in the last 3 years. And I don't get it. I don't get it. We have done that party, and he wasn't my candidate. I was a Bernie Sanders person, but I can't help but be completely impressed by the administration, not just Joe Biden, but everyone that he has appointed has done their job magnificently. Pete Buttigieg, Deb Haaglund.
I can actually answer this one, Barb. And it's a Will Rogers quote. I'm not a member of any organized political party. I'm a Democrat.
That's why I'm not a Democrat, though. This is exactly why I am not a member of that party. I can vote for him. I don't send him a fucking dime. I can't because that's right, Wesco. The media will not cover Biden's accomplishments. They make fun of him. He's old Joe.
Blaming media. Stop blaming the media. Okay?
Why not?
That's like blaming your doctor because you have cancer.
Do you read the New York Times now? By any chance? Do you look at the front page of the fucking New York Times? The hot dog eating contest got more coverage than anything that Joe Biden did. It's embarrassing. It's ridiculous. And I'm trying to
get from cuckoo land on this one, Barb. So keep going. He's also the one that exposed that Trump and his family are in cahoots with the Russians.
Can I also add that fewer and fewer people are reading the New York Times or the Detroit Free Press or the Detroit News? They're living in these bubbles that are reinforced by social media, so they don't have any time, so they go to their social media, which points them to like these right-wing media sites like the Daily Caller, the Daily Wire, Fox Business, whatever. It depends on what degree of crazy you want to be. And that's where they're hearing about, Joe Biden. Look, here's a video of Joe Biden walking very slowly. Here's Joe Biden looking clueless at a dance. I feel like the rise of the partisan media is effective.
But if you can't even go on the major media.
I mean, isn't that the issue that Biden can't articulate his own case? That's the problem. He can't articulate it. So someone else has to be able to articulate what we've accomplished and what we're doing forward. Biden had an opportunity to do that in the debate. And he did he looked like a demented old man. That was the problem. He cannot articulate his own accomplishments, and if a dog cannot wag his own tail, he ain't much of a dog.
But Donald Trump can't make a sentence can't form a sentence without saying something stupid like Hannibal Lecter or punching sharks.
Trump's got awful. I'm not suggesting that. What I'm suggesting is that we need somebody who can articulate just what you're saying, because those are the issues that really matter to human beings. They should. Our schooling, our jobs, everything. And you need somebody who knows what the hell they're doing.
Alan.
I watched every night, and I watched a lot of it through CNN. And I was really kind of getting disgusted with Jake Tapper and Anderson Cooper. There was no analytical. I mean, I think they're so fearful of the Republicans of being. I mean, the media is always worried, particularly the national media during election time, that they're being, oh, you're Democrats, you're being biased, and so they bend over backwards. I mean, it was so like. I was like, what are you guys doing? It was like Anderson Cooper, Jake Tapper. Oh, my God, this is great unity. They're showing unity. What about pointing out that a lot of Republicans are disenfranchised? We're talking about Mitt Romney, Peter Meyer, a lot of, decent Republicans who want nothing to do with the party. They're not there. They're not there. They're not sucking up to Trump.
I think it's because they see these 4 days as an infomercial for the party, and they're just going to play along at some point. Yep. I don't know. I mean, let's see how they cover the Democratic convention, which will at least be yielding serious news. Right. So there's that.
I would like, I'm sorry, just really fast. I would like somebody to report on the Epstein documents that were released. Was it 2 weeks ago?
It was a while ago.
It was recent. The most recent ones. The Guardian UK had it, and all the names.
Barb, do you have a subscription to the New York Times or the Washington Post?
I do.
You do. Did you see
the Guardian? And I read Bridge, Michigan, and I read Axios, and I read ProPublica.
That's great. Did you see the stories the New York Times and the Washington Post did on Ryan Zinke, on Scott Pruitt, on all these Trump cabinet members? You didn't see those? Did you just see the hot dog eating contest?
Did you see them recently? Have you seen them in the last couple months?
They got exposed by the media and got removed. I mean, you didn't see that? You only know Joey Chestnut? What part of the paper you reading? They don't even have.
I missed Joey Chestnut. I missed that one.
I mean,
hey, Alan, why don't we move to a commercial right now and take a bit of a commercial break?
All right.
Neighborhood beautification. That's very important to Detroit. It's very important to block clubs, organizations, and people who live in the community. We got started with 2 lots and a vision of a treehouse center. Because if we can take these blighted lots, Detroit give us grants to be able to do something with them that the community wants, it's a plus, because we're bringing our neighborhoods back to where we want them to be, where they should be. All because I live in Detroit.
Fellas, I'm new in town, and I've been here a couple times. I absolutely love your place, man. But I've got to ask you, if you can, I've heard that you're going to be shutting this place down.
I'm not proud of it, brother, but we're behind our property taxes. And the county is all over us, man. I'm even afraid to even give them a call.
Well, we can't let it go, brother. I mean, we can't give up. There's got to be a GoFundMe campaign that we can run, even past the plate. Is there a forgiveness program or something that's out there?
Well, unfortunately, that's only for the big guys. No, actually, Wayne County has payment plans for everyone.
Are you for real?
Yes, it's a well-designed program. We want to help you save your business.
That's what I'm talking about.
I'm Wayne County Treasurer Elrick Sabri. If you have delinquent taxes on your home or business, contact our office, 313-224-5990, or visit our website, treasurer.waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
Got it.
I love that commercial.
So on the issue about how the rest of the world might view an American president that's not Biden or Trump, from being in Europe for a good part of a month recently, I think that they've moved beyond both of them. I don't think that the idea of personal relationships means anything anymore, because the volatility that we've seen over a pretty decent amount of time, probably going all the way back to maybe Clinton, shows that the American presidency isn't necessarily the old handshake anymore. And so if the teams are well equipped, which I think at this point we can presume a better, more sane and rational team set up by Democrats, I think that will restore more confidence when it comes to how people see the U.S. and engagement on both conflicts in the Middle East and or Ukraine. Because right now there is just simply too much eye rolling. Nobody cares if people have a relationship like Clinton had with Yeltsin or somebody else. So let's see how that plays out.
I'm curious about what your read was. I've done a fair amount of traveling in Europe recently.
Yeah.
What your read is about the Europeans' concern about Trump getting reelected.
I think, Bill, what I saw was something beyond trepidation, with the exception of Nigel Farage in the UK, who I think needed a bib to stop all the drooling at the prospect of Trump being reelected. But I think probably, and you might have seen this too, and Nancy, you're also in Europe. I think that there's a realization that Pax Americana is coming to an end.
Yeah.
And with that, I think the European Union is now trying to decide that they have to go it alone in many ways. They're going to cut deals with Russia. They're going to cut deals with China. Keir Starmer, the newly elected prime minister in the UK, is going to try to cozy up to the EU more. There's just simply too much uncertainty when it comes to the US. With too many presidential cycles going through of that kind of unpredictability for them to think that the U.S. will actually come back from it. So,
I think you're right. I think that's definitely, it's like, if NATO falls apart, it's going to be every man for himself, and we're not going to help. And that's, I heard JD Vance say that a second President Trump will negotiate an end to the war in Ukraine. And what that means is he's going to give Putin the parts of Ukraine that he says he wants for now, and then call it the war is over. It's like if Mexico had invaded from the south and had occupied Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico, and somebody came in and negotiated it away by saying, okay, you can have these 3 states, and the United States will go on as a nation of 47 states. And I think that's kind of that's what they're anticipating. It's
then we wouldn't have to remember the Alamo anymore, Nancy. But
would they take Abbott? Would they take Abbott in the deal? Would they have to take Abbott?
Yeah, I think they have to take Abbott. I think that's it. So it could be an okay, it could be a win-win, So I get it.
Listen. Well, remember what Vance said earlier this week. He said that the UK has now turned into, and will become more of under Labour, quote, an Islamist country with nuclear weapons. So
Wow.
the kind of xenophobia that he's telegraphing across the Atlantic, I'm sure that's not going to go over very well with Starmer, and probably explains why Starmer is now in Brussels, or cozying up to Brussels again because of the EU. One question that I did want to raise, though, Joel, you mentioned the merits of Gretchen Whitmer being a viable candidate on the Democratic side. The Trump campaign has sued Governor Whitmer and Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson for allegedly using federal offices to register voters. If Whitmer were to then become the state office, the nominee, would that then be a distraction, or is this just going to be whoever is going to be the nominee is going to be met with a bunch of distractions?
There's going to be a million distractions, and if there are none in reality, they'll be created in fiction. So
sand in the gears.
I think that if Whitmer does have that national stage and is the nominee, she comports herself beautifully. She's young, she's vibrant, she's bright, and I think she can handle Trump. I think Trump would be very intimidated by her. She's a strong woman who's super bright and quick, and I think she would be an excellent candidate. I think the Democrats would win. I think we gain excitement. There'd be momentum. We're no longer the party of the decrepit. We're the party of relative youth. And by some vitality and some ideas, and I think we would have a much better shot. So I think people will accept her. There'll always be distractions, but the core of who Gretchen is will come out.
Even with that private jet flight down to Florida to see her dad, Joel. I mean, that was a scandal.
That was a scam.
She made.
Who would ever do that?
Well, you know what? It's not so much that she did the flight. She handled that whole thing wrong, and she kept saying, "Oh, it's going to cost $800. They're going to pay for it." Then suddenly it was $20,000. She foolishly let Republicans who own the jet fly her down, and assuredly someone affiliated with them leaked that out. I would say she's gotten the national media just gushes over her. She's gotten a lot of really soft, like very positive coverage. She would come under a lot more scrutiny. I don't think she gets much scrutiny from the Michigan press.
She kind of shuts them out. I mean,
she'll
let Politico, Politico or the Atlantic practically sleep in bed with her and watch her brush her teeth in the morning. But, the free press or the news, not so much. But she's clearly, she's smart. She's thinking like, what's your next job going to be? Well, she sees herself on a national stage, and that's what
she's got her biography out. She's got her.
Yeah, I know. Well,
and about her tattoos.
More opportunities for Charlie LaDuff to go on Fox News and pretend that he's a real reporter. So there you go.
Can we go back to the lawsuit? I have filed some lawsuits that people have called silly before. This lawsuit's the silliest lawsuit I have ever seen. It alleges that it was a political act for the Secretary of State, one of whom's job's responsibility is to make sure people get registered to vote, and the governor, who also shares in that responsibility, dared to commit the political act of trying to register voters, especially veterans.
Yeah.
This is a lawsuit that is going nowhere, and it's ridiculous. You cannot mix your politics. You can't use your office to commit political acts. This allegation is, well, wait a minute. If they registered voters, it's because they want the Democrats to win. Wait a minute. Trump always says he's got all the veterans. It seems to me that would have been helping Trump. It's a ridiculous lawsuit. It reads ridiculous. I did not notice who the judge it's assigned to was. Not sure it was on there. I think I might have gotten it before it was actually filed. But this lawsuit should be dismissed relatively quickly.
Well, Bill, speaking of dismissing lawsuits, Eileen Cannon dismissed the classified documents case down in Florida. I seem to recall, and you probably did as well, because I know you're really meticulous about reading these opinions. Clarence Thomas in the presidential immunity case signaled his disdain for the special prosecutor's appointments law. Was he just simply sending a message to Cannon saying, "Hey, listen, go ahead and dismiss it. It's going to get appealed by Special Prosecutor Jack Smith, and by the time it comes up to us, we'll take care of the rest"?
It's the only explanation I see, because every judge, every court, every panel that's ever looked at this issue has upheld the power of special prosecutors from Nixon on up. This is again, the only thing that she relied on was the dicta in Thomas's dissent.
Right. I mean, it was like he gave her an order and she took it.
Well, I don't know about an order, a wink and a nod. I mean, it's you can't
Isn't it
really
why
say it's a conspiracy because it's right there out in the open.
I think the opinion was wrapped around a Coke can, and that's how Thomas sent it to. Lastly, I'd like to go ahead and talk about a verdict is in the Samantha Woll murder case. And it seems as though it's a split decision, so to speak. Allan, I know you've been covering the case quite closely.
I would say, regardless of whether you thought, one of the acquittals was on premeditated murder, and the prosecution in his closing arguments said theorized, because he's just sort of putting together circumstantial evidence and saying this is what happened. He says the guy he'd been checking cars that were unlocked, looking in, and then he didn't get much that night, and so he checked. The door was open. He walked in thinking he could maybe just steal some stuff and take off. He saw her there, Samantha Woll, and spontaneously murdered her because he didn't want to be recognized. He already had 3 felony convictions, didn't want to be. So the idea that it was premeditated, that's the right decision, I think, by the jury on that. Then the question becomes on the felony murder, where it was a hung jury, which means at least one, if not, probably likely more, had decided that he did do it. And then there's the other side of that who thinks he didn't do it. The defendant testified in court that he stumbled upon the body. She had been stabbed inside and then she came outside. He claims he touched her, stumbled on the body, and that's how he got blood there. So the parents issued a statement afterwards saying they're convinced that Michael Jackson Balonis is the guy. But, it was a tough case because they did not have any evidence. He was wearing surgical gloves that night, as they could see from video. There are no fingerprints. They could not match any of the footprints. It was just a messy crime scene. And so I think my guess is particularly with the parents really pushing for it, my guess is they're going to go for the 2 deadlock.
Alan, have you heard anything about what the breakdown was in the jury room?
I have not. I have not. But I'm assuming they have a hearing, I think, next week, and I'm assuming they're going to pursue it. I mean, I think the parents, talking to the parents, I'm sure the parents are like, yes, he did it. Let's go at it again. So the 2 charges that are outstanding is felony murder and then home invasion. And so
go ahead. Go.
I wish Steve were here, because my experience with this is that with hung jurors, the person has to make a decision. And I've had 2 in my career. The person has to make a decision about retrial, looks at the numbers and says, okay, well, what are the numbers for guilty and what were the numbers for innocent? In my civil cases, it was what were the numbers, for liability versus non-liability, and that's how you make a decision.
I think the question is, what is that? What's that tipping point of the number? It's like if it's 11-1, 10-2 for acquittal, they'll probably be like, nah, this is too far.
If they were deadlocked the wrong way, the person making the decision usually doesn't want to retry that case.
But Bill, in how many cases? I mean, I've heard very few where you have a confession from someone who was intimate with the deceased, who. That I think is reasonable doubt. He comes in, he confesses to a crime. I have not heard of somebody becoming psychotic when they use antidepressants.
Yeah,
I just haven't.
I do think that's a fascinating part of this case. I'll tell you another thing. The guy
they're not happy with that. They weren't happy with the twist on that. And look, they investigated him. They went to his home. They did everything, and they couldn't find anything. And here's a guy who has blood, and maybe it's wrong place at the wrong time.
Didn't they also give him immunity when he was testifying?
They gave him immunity on the stand, not immunity beyond.
Not complete use immunity.
I want to say something about what he was convicted of, this because this crime has always bothered me. Lying to the police is a crime, but you will notice that the cops lying to him is not a crime. As a matter of fact, they talk about it being a standard investigative tool. And I don't know about the rest of you.
Approved by the Supreme Court, I think.
Right, right. I find that offensive. I think that the notion that you can't lie to the police, but the police can lie to you, is something that we should not tolerate in this society. I mean, either you should get rid of the crime of lying to the police, or you ought to get rid of the rule that says, "Oh, it's fine if the police lie to you."
Right.
I just find it in our society at this point in time that notion seems offensive to me.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Alan, why don't we go to our last segment then?
All right. Let's see. Let me hear one more time of.
No. What happened to the embargo
Hey,
here?
next week,
No,
let's
Bill,
all
no,
send
actually-
an embarrassing photo of ourselves as
Yes,
Actually,
we
was
can
it-
post them
actually,
all.
Nancy, I
Mr.
dare say
Mr.
none of you can come up with anything that embarrassing.
Oh, I think I got a contenders.
Really?
I've
You got
got
a
most
unibrow like
contenders.
that?
Mr. Seikaly, for you, I'm going to say, oh no, it's the Mr. Bill show.
Okay.
Downtown Detroit, Robert Wells, Schmuck of the Week.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. So let's start with ML.
Oh, well, I'm gonna say the president of a real shithole country, Vladimir Putin, that just sentenced a reporter, those guys who don't tell any truth, they're only write about hot dog eating contests, to 16 years in prison.
Yeah.
You're trying to get the truth out about what's going on in Russia. 16 years. The trial was rushed. Not that anybody thought it was going to be deliberative or fair. And presumably, because they were just trying to set this guy up for a prisoner exchange, Evan Gershkovich of the Wall Street Journal has been sitting in a prison in Russia as a political pawn. And perhaps he's going to be coming home, someone who I suspect is innocent, so that we can send some people back to Russia who probably are not innocent. So for that, Trump's favorite dictator, maybe it's a tie with Urban, I don't know. I'm going to say Vladimir Putin and his shithole country are our schmuck of the week.
And also probably Vance's favorite dictator.
He invaded a sovereign country twice.
Yeah.
I was going to say, just from the experience from Danny Fenster, I think a lot of these countries, what they do is convict on false allegations so that they can say, look, it's valid. We had a trial, the person was convicted, and then they make the trades or whatever, do the releases. But they have to, it's part of the process of getting released is to have to be convicted to show they didn't just willy-nilly arrest him and under bullshit.
Legitimize.
Yeah, they went through a real trial and he got convicted.
Did we? By the way, did we send anybody to Singapore after Michael Fay was convicted and caned? Just out. It's been a while. So,
Just asking.
Okay. Barb. Just asking. Yeah, Barb.
I'm going to just say this. Some of my best friends on this planet have been reporters, including the lovely Allan Lengel down here. My best friend in the entire world, Zachary Ball McCain, was a reporter. I know who decides what gets run in the paper and who doesn't. So don't interrupt you. I don't interrupt you, ML. Shut up, okay?
Yeah, they also spoke the truth. That's
Anyway, so my schmucks of the week are Republicans, members of their party that sat there and they did their little off-tempo dance and they clapped off the beat and they wore little sanitary napkins on their ears and swallowed that whole thing in full. And I think we can beat them, and I think we will beat them if we get our shit together and stop being dramatic and remember that we beat the living shit out of Donald Trump the last time he ran, and we can do it again. We just have to get out of our own way and do it. So Republicans, that's right. Did you see the picture of Rudy falling down in the middle of the aisle?
Everybody did.
I love that guy.
That
guy is drinking so much.
Oh, he's giving us so much.
So those are my schmucks of the week.
Okay. All right. I think he was adjusting his fly, and that caused him to trip and fall.
No, here we go. This is a cue for the Giuliani picture, I thought, but no. Okay.
Joel.
Okay, here I'm going to go with Matt Gaetz, and here's why. Apparently, he's taken some plastic surgery or gone through a whole bunch
Did
of
you
change.
see him? He looks like Wayne Newton
He's
now.
terrifying.
It's hilarious.
So the beauty of this, though, here's what's going to happen: is he is going to grow into the ugly, disgusting, repulsive human being he is, and he's going to do it by changing himself. And so he got like a facelift. His eyebrows went kind of crazy. He got Botox. Yeah, he got his cheeks
stuffed.
Yeah, I mean, he got filler. This guy went total Kardashian, right? So it's fucking nuts. But he is my schmuck of the week for a million reasons. But that was just sad. Those pictures, if you look at them, they're frightening.
Yep.
He actually, his eyebrows look like when Uncle Leo had to get his eyebrows redone on Seinfeld.
He's got a thing for younger women, so he's got to keep, he's got to keep up
look
the.
But he's just becoming more disgusting as the day goes by, and he's going to grow into as disgusting and repulsive as he is, and he's going to appear that way until the day he dies.
He actually looks like the butthead character in that SNL skit recently. Looks just like him.
Yeah, that would be
Bill. Yeah.
Well,
Bill.
I've got a number of them. Certainly one of them is Allan Lengel for posting that picture.
Ah.
I'm not going to make any eyebrow comments given that picture. But and the list of foreign dictators is too long to mention, but I'm going to go with the low-hanging fruit and pick JD Vance, who clearly has absolutely no principles. If you look at everything he said in 2016 and where he is today and what he said during his acceptance speech and then everything Trump has said, you realize this guy has no principles at all. What he says is inconsistent with what Trump says, and yet he thinks Trump's the best thing since sliced bread. I assume that there is a proctologist on staff so that when Trump stops quickly, they can assist JD's removal
from his ass.
With the jaws of life, yes.
Everybody got it. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, we got it. Yeah.
Right.
That's an assassination.
Oh, very, very.
Right. I like that.
All right, Nancy.
Well, this makes a good bookend to Bill's. I'm going with Usha Vance, or is it Usha or Usha?
Usha. It's
Usha Vance, who has been everything that her two-faced husband claims he is opposed to, which is, women who work and put their children in childcare and devote everything to their career, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I'm assuming their children went into childcare because they have 3 of them, and she is a Yale-educated lawyer. Now, I've known people who've walked away from law school educations fairly early in their career because they realized they didn't like it. But you don't walk away from Yale. You don't walk away from a Yale law degree.
She's a successful trial lawyer, Nancy.
She is a successful trial lawyer, exactly. So for the, but this is pretty common. I mean, we've seen this throughout the culture wars, Dr. Laura Schlesinger, who practically, horsewhipped callers who dared to have a job while she, powered through her media career. I mean, all these, it happens over and over and over again. But it's happening again, and I would say Usha Vance for standing by that particular man, Schmuck. So,
all right, Alan.
I'm going to do quick ones. CNN, Anderson Cooper, Jake Tapper for just doing really a horrible job of just sucking up the whole night, and just for reasons that they don't want to be looked at as bias. And the other one is Itamar Ben-Gvir, the Minister of National Security. The Shin Bet, the IDF, the Mossad are all on board. They're ready to do a ceasefire. And this motherfucker keeps threatening that he's going to quit the cabinet and Netanyahu's going to lose his job. And it's the most criminal thing that I've seen. They're this close to having a ceasefire, and he wants to interfere with the American election. He wants to do something to manipulate it so Trump gets into office. So that's a schmuck.
That's definitely a schmuck.
Why just blame the Iranians? So I've got 2. One is Tucker Carlson for encouraging men to tan their scrotum to increase testosterone. I imagine that Mr. Carlson spends a lot of time with his phone inside his pants with a flashlight on, so that he can not only get a tan, but he can also
lay
get
on your back and you put your legs in the air and you greet. It's like a sun
Just
salutation.
don't care.
Yeah.
Do you still get that kind of trifold aluminum thing? I mean, I don't even.
I think you're supposed to face the rising sun.
Yeah, you are.
So crazy.
Oh, God.
I have a feeling that would increase the number of eclipses because the sun doesn't want to see that. But my real schmuck of the week is actually the leadership at MSNBC News, including Cesar Conde and Rashida Jones, for actually taking Morning Joe off the air on the first day of the Republican National Convention for fear that either Mika Brzezinski or Joe Scarborough or any of their guests would make an inappropriate comment. This is not only suppression of press, but it also shows a really dangerous a model that MSNBC has done. They did the same thing last year with journalist Mehdi Hassan. In fact, Mehdi, after conducting a pretty tough interview, nothing tougher than what you see on the BBC or in the UK or even in Haaretz in Israel, they decided to take him off the air. In fact, they took him and Ayman Mohyeddin and Ali Velshi all off the air the weekend after the October 7th attack. Mehdi was then going to be benched for a year on given full salary, and he says, no, I'm going to walk away so that I can actually say what I want. But the very idea that there is this level of pusillanimous perspective on the part of the leadership of networks because they're worried about ratings or somebody else raining down on them doesn't bode well for the Republic. So Cesar Conde and Rashida Jones, you're my schmucks of the week. I think you should go and get you should get tanned like Tucker wants you to.
I would say this for MSNBC. I give Alicia Menendez credit. She was on the air last night looking, doing her job while her father has just been convicted, I think, on all 16 counts of corruption. He got off in 2017 on a hung jury. He should have left it alone. And then the very next year, him and the woman he was dating, who eventually became the wife, they got in all kinds of briberies, taking cars and cash.
And gold bars.
And gold bars. He's a disgrace. He is a thorough disgrace.
And he won't resign, even though they're calls.
I think he's going to. I think he's going to.
He's going to have to. Yeah. Well, anyway, and this is
I just want to make one comment, if I could. That's a commentary that Steve Fishman is almost always right about. You get these things in front of a jury, the jury's going to make the right call. This is how we find justice in this country.
Yep.
We let a jury make these decisions.
Yep.
And they don't always get it right, but the vast majority of times they do.
Yeah.
Now, this is not a product endorsement, but for anybody who's gotten a plantar fasciitis because they've got a gold bar tucked into their shoes, I strongly recommend Skechers. Very, very comfortable shoe. My need for Skechers had nothing to do with gold bars inside or any kind of fallen arch, but dang, they really help you hit those 20,000 steps if you're trekking around the UK. So There you go, Bob Menendez. Maybe they'll give you a pair in jail.
There you go.
Well, thank you all for being on, for just covering a lot of material in this rather busy week. Thank you, Joel Sklar. Thank you, Bill Seikaly. Thank you, ML Elrick. Thank you, Barb Ingalls. Thank you, Nancy Derringer. And thank you, and with the last word, always, Allan Lengel.
Drive home safely.